Good evening, everybody. Back on the utility series. I'm going to be doing a few more of these videos, as I mentioned in the last one. And today I'm looking at actual underlying tech versus software and the difference between what you can invest in and what you can hold with this. As the outline you can see in front of you, I'm going to walk in through a personal anecdote of my own using a point of sale. That's what POS stands for, in a cafe that I worked at versus a non-POS system years ago, how that relates to XRP versus Mastercard, and then also the underlying tech and those investments versus a stock, which is just a paper facsimile of that accordingly. So let's get into it. Get my little marker pen out, and I'm going to go into the POS cafe system. Now, I was fortunate enough when I got out of college and started teaching. I couldn't pay the bills of teaching, so I had to have like a couple of gig teaching jobs that I paired with a couple of other jobs that where I was waiting tables at two different restaurants. So I had four jobs, probably about 8 to 10 hours a piece, juggling back and forth Monday through Sunday. I didn't really have any days off back then, but the two different restaurant jobs, one was an old school guy who did not use any modern technological point of sale systems where you as a server could just hit the button and order the cheeseburger or whatever it was. He had the old paper ticket system and he felt more comfortable that way. He wasn't an old guy. He was probably about 33 as an executive chef, and that's just how he ran his restaurant. Whereas the second job that I had waiting tables, fully souped out system, point of sale, hit the button and order a shrimp po' boy or whatever it was. And it spit out reports at the end of the night. It tracked your inventory. It tracked usage rates and things of that nature, where the old school guy had to either kind of wing it on that end or just hire somebody or spend some extra time doing that at the end of the night or the end of the week. So two different realms in that and how that operated. But the key with this is that the salesperson, when they're going to sell the idea of a point of sale system to my old school guy as an example, there's underlying tech underneath that, not just the tech, but also the code for it. And they don't go into his restaurant and say, hey, look at all this fancy technological code I have that could change your whole restaurant and make it so much easier for you. No, 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 no. They want to show them, here's a button for Coke, here's a button for Dr. Pepper, here's a button for cheeseburgers or whatever the case may be, and here's what it's going to cost. I'll even give it to you for a low price if you have X amount of dollars per month that you can pay us for maintenance fees for keeping up with it, just in case the ship breaks down and things of that nature. So it's a combined package that someone on the software technological end would be wanting to put in front of the face of a restaurant owner or a chef to make their lives easier. It's a technological code and solution for solving a problem underneath, but on the top of it, you and your team, here's what you're going to see and here's what you're going to interact with. That's the way it would work, at least for that end. XRP's got the same dynamic here. You have the XRP underneath. We've seen how it works because we trade it back and forth. All XRP is technological code for solving a problem. And this problem is the cross-border payments issue, which I outlined in my last utility series video. And that's the side of it. We're going into banks, and Garlinghouse's sales team isn't going in showing them how amazing XRP is, but all that stuff that they do underneath leads to a software system in a bank where the employees and they know the training manager can actually train them simply on the technology to do what? Send money across the world. That's really what they're trying to do. They're not really interested in the technological aspects of what XRP can do on our end. Us as investors want to know that what we have is a solid technological code, I guess we could say, or solid technology underlying that we're going to invest in because we want to see a return on it. But the people who are in the banks aren't interested in the underlying tech speak that you're using with that code. They're only interested in the interface that their team will have to use in order to batch payments at the end of the day or in the middle of the day from the United States to England or Indonesia to Thailand or anywhere else in the world. That's really all they're looking at there. And interestingly enough, the XRP side modern day, the internet made this happen. Bitcoin opened up the world to people thinking in the ideas of blockchain and distributed ledger. But what happened is if you went back into the late 1970s when Mastercard got started, Mastercard had its own tech and code at the bottom of this, but nobody was really interested in how the credit card worked. They were only interested in, do I have a card in my wallet with that symbol on it that a vendor will accept as payment? Because before that, it was what? Cash, ass, or grass, as they call it, right? But mostly cash. What MasterCard allowed people to do is not carry cash around to where you get robbed, potentially, but carry a facsimile, something that was representing money that you would be spending with some kind of vendor. And then MasterCard would pay the bill and you'd pay MasterCard the bill plus whatever interest they decide to charge you at that level. And let's just pretend that we were able to actually invest in the bottom end on this tech code for MasterCard, where back in 1979, we could say, hey, this sounds like a pretty good thing to have. This could be the future of people carrying around plastic in their wallets, which was a foreign concept in the 60s and 70s. But this could be something I want to get in on. Could you get in on it? No, because it wasn't available. But let's suppose you were able to do so. Basically, MasterCard processes $9.3 trillion in transactions a year, which ends up to be 775 billion a month. And that works out to be, if you can look at it, 25 billion per day. And let's just suppose you were able to negotiate because you had the underlying code. Say, look, I'll invest in your little company here, but I want some kind of return on a percentage basis for the business that you do. What would that look like? Well, if you negotiated just 1% of those transactions, you would earn 56 million a year, just based on 1% of MasterCard transactions by investing in the underlying tech. If you went down and just did 0.1%, you're talking about 5.67 million a year that you would earn off of those. Every time a card swiped, you get paid. Every time a card swipe, you get paid. Every time a card swipe, you get paid. And maybe if you wanted to do 0.01 percentage, you're talking 560,000 a year there. But we didn't have that option with MasterCard back in 1979. As a matter of fact, they built their business model on putting a lot of people into debt. And by putting a lot of people into debt, it got to a point where MasterCard said, okay, in the event that we want to go public and allow people to invest in our company, nobody could invest in the stock initially in 1979. You still can't do it today. But if, let's just say you had the foresight in 2006 when MasterCard developed their IPO and they went public, you could get in for MasterCard's business model after 27 years of them doing that. You could buy stock at $39 a share. Lucky you, huh? Today, MasterCard closed at $519 a share. Even luckier, if you got in at 39, or if you're one of the lucky accredited investors that was able to do that, you could pretty much make bank. Now, on the XRP side, you're investing in the underlying tech that's going to go into these software systems, not the software systems themselves. What did that look like in 2012? Basically, ICO was basically 1 cent. You can invest in the future tech of the underlying software of the banking system for the rest of the world. Pretty good. And if you looked at the closing price just a few minutes ago, it's $2.35 a coin. Still a pretty good deal if you look at it, because you cannot buy Ripple stock yet because they haven't gone public, whether it was when XRP was released or even today. So your entry point into this is much, much better at the underlying tech side than it is the paper representation of investing in the wealth of a company the same way a stock is owned today. The other side to it is that you buy that paper representation in that stock, you don't own it. DTCC owns it. In the case of the underlying tech for XRP, you own the underlying tech because you can self-custody that by taking it off the exchange from where you bought it. Big difference between these two. Both could be just as lucrative. Mastercard was the future in the late 70s. Nobody knew it. XRP is the future in 2024. I don't think anybody knows it now, except just a few key people who have invested in this. So my conclusion with this is, number one, understand what you own, always, anytime you invest in anything. Two, understand your leverage to negotiate with it. Obviously, market makers are going to be looking for this once it becomes far more scarce. And banks are going to be looking for it when they're forced to flip the switch and go on it. And all of a sudden you have a couple thousand, 10,000, 20,000 of these things on a cold wallet, and banks are going to need it to do their business on a day-to-day basis. How much leverage does that put in your pocket to go into a bank with a cold wallet to verify that you have 10,000 XRP and they're going to need it to actually conduct their business on a day-to-day basis? Enormous, similar to what you could have done with Mastercard if they allowed you to invest in the individual tech side. And the thing I'll always stress here is understand the importance of buying the underlying assets themselves and not a paper representation of them. ETFs are a good example of a paper representation of an actual asset. It's not the asset itself, it's an ETF of Bitcoin, because the people who are buying the ETFs, they trust their broker. They don't want to get into the whole wallet and custody and the blockchain and anything else. Too complicated for them to figure out. Here's $10,000, put it into a Bitcoin ETF and watch it run. However, just comparing this and Mastercard, you know what you own, and you own the underlying asset, and you can self-custody it, meaning nobody can take it away from you unless you respond to those scam artists trying to steal it from you. So hope this helped kind of put things in perspective. Hope you're seeing kind of utility, at least on the basic level, as we build on this. I'm going to keep doing these types of short videos with my little whiteboard. Again, giant hugs.